All right, so picking up where we left off, we had created this pattern. And what I'd like to do, excuse me, is even though I made a copy over here on the pasteboard, I would like to also duplicate this in place. So I will keep this backup original off to the side, but for this one called foundation, let's just create this by dragging it and dropping it onto this new layer icon. And now we've got one that's in the exact same place. So what I can do is I will take the foundation layer that's on the bottom, and for right now, I will call that to be determined, TBD. Okay, and then I'm going to lock it and hide it. All right, so now we're just dealing with the top layer. And so where it says foundation, let's call that, let's call it live paint. We're going to do a little demonstration on how you can use live paint. And there's some different things that I could do with this, but let's just get started with that. First of all, I'm going to go up here to Window, and then I'm going to find my swatches. I want to open those up. And one of the things that's nice about the swatches, I'm going to dock that right. Actually, can I dock it right there? Whatever. I'm just going to leave it right there. I'll just leave my symbols separate. Okay, so for swatches, I'm going to go ahead and get the colors together. And right now I've got these colors in my swatch panel. And I want to see what other options I have. So there's this little library icon down here, and you could choose from a range of different things. And you can, search through these. So like, for instance, if we wanted to look, also there are patterns too, by the way. So like dots and lines and things like that. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to stick with color right now. So let's do, I don't know, something like color properties. And for right now, let's just stick with, I guess, cool. And we have some different options here. Now, if I like any of these and I decide that I do want to use them, then I can pick them up and I can just click on it like that, and it shows up in my swatches so that I can easily key through them. And you'll see in a minute why that's handy. And I could choose a number of these different ones. I'm also going to go back to the library here, and let's look at some other options so that you can see, like, for instance, nature. Let's look at beach and see what options we have for beach. Maybe these would be nice. Maybe somewhere in this ballpark. Let's take a look at that. It's got a good range of different things, including some colors that might be part of a sunset or something. Anyway, so I'm just going to play around with this. So to do live paint, essentially what's happening when you do live paint, first of all, I'm going to select everything. And I need to have everything that I want selected that I want to include in the live paint option. And the thing that's nice about live paint is that it just allows you to click into the shape forms, even though, all these things are like overlapping and stuff, but it allows you to color things very easily. It used to be very difficult years and years ago before live paint existed. You had to do all kinds of stuff with Pathfinder and Shape Builder and all that, or Shapefinder and stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to go up here to Object, and I'm going to come down to Live Paint and say Make. And there's also a shortcut, so Option or Alt on Windows. So Option Command is also Control on Windows, and then the letter X. So if I wanted to just make this a Live Paint object, I can either press this or I can do Option Command X, and now it is live paint. And in order for me to be able to paint, I can either immediately just click the letter K, and then I can hover over stuff, and you see that it's got like a little swatch pattern on the top. And essentially, if I were to nudge my keys left and right and stuff, you'll also see over in the swatches panel, you'll see that it's moving through my swatch colors, right? And so, which is kind of nice, right? So I can choose based off of that. And I think that might be what I elect to do. So anyway, so I can just start clicking inside of here, and I can start coloring things as I see fit. And so, I could maybe make that a little bit darker, and so on. All right, so I'm starting to create this, and it also might be a little bit like giving you an illusion, for instance, that there's green in here, and yellow, but there's not. It's just the selection. So if I just click off of that for a second, you'll see that this is what it actually looks like, which is actually pretty nice. But if I go back to the letter K again, I don't have the selection anymore, but I do have Live Paint active, which is great. And okay, so let's just say that we want to continue thumbing through these things, arrowing through. Let's maybe go to something that's much darker, and we'll do maybe something like this. I'm just kind of playing around, and this is exactly what you can do. Just play around until you land on something that you think is good, right? And your pattern, you may have deviated from what I was doing, and so your pattern may be looking different, but you can automatically see how this is useful. And then maybe I want to move into a different color panel or a swatch set. And I think that this might actually look pretty nice in order for me to add sort of like this gold color, because, blue and yellow are complements of one another. So it's kind of in the same range, I guess. So I could have something that is, maybe actually for this one, I would want to go to a darker gold color because I'm getting, in fact, let's just zoom in a little bit. Because I'm getting closer to a darker set. And you can see how easy it is to override your colors. And then, maybe in this section, I would want to do, this centerpiece is darker. I don't know. And anyway, you see how simple this is, right? Now, here's the thing about Live Paint is that, I can keep working with this as it is, but I just want to show you something that if you were to take your selection tool, for instance, and you were to select this, it's going to select the whole group, but you need to realize that when you're in Live Paint, if you look inside the layers over here, let me move this out of the way. If I click on where it says Live Paint, that's the name I gave that layer. If I open this up, you'll see that Live Paint basically put everything in a group. And, well, actually, it was already in a group, and then it put it into a new group called Live Paint. All right, so it grouped a group, right? And then it called that Live Paint. So basically, if I wanted to affect any of these things, like if I wanted to go in and change the stroke, for instance, because don't forget that this actually does have a very thin stroke. If I click off of this, you'll see that there's like a little bit of an outline. And if you don't like that, then what you would need to do to remove the stroke, you can't remove the stroke with Live Paint. What you would have to do is, well, you can't just do it through the simple Live Paint procedure. You need to go into the group. So you need to go like into isolation mode. There's some different ways of doing that. I can select this, and then I can double click it, and then you'll see up here in the top left, it goes into isolation mode and it chooses the next group down. Well, remember I grouped some things before I duplicated stuff, right? So there are a number of groups in here. So I'd have to go deeper into the next group by double clicking, and then it gives me some options to select, and then I have to double click again. And then I can start to get the individual pieces while I'm in isolation mode. And you can see over here on the right in layers, it shows me, hey, you're in isolation mode, right? You're in the Live Paint group in isolation mode. So it doesn't show you all of your layers. So if you ever, look over in your layers and you feel like, oh my gosh, my layers are all missing, but it says isolation mode, it means that you've double clicked or you've selected somehow into a group. And then also the other tip is that in the top left, you would always want to look up here to see if you're in isolation mode inside the group. And you can just dive deeper and deeper into groups. Okay, so if I wanted to select all of these and remove the stroke, I could do, let's say I want to remove all of the strokes. That's easy. I can go to do Command A. I can then go over here where you see how it says the fill is a question mark. That's fine. It's because we have different fill colors assigned to different things and it's in Live Paint. but the stroke is not being affected by that. So I could select the stroke, pull it in the foreground, and then choose the transparency feature for that. And then you'll see that the stroke actually disappears, and I have this really kind of lovely pattern that's not obfuscated by this little thin black stroke. Okay, and then if I wanted to come all the way out, I can click up here like this, and now I am out, and I can go back to my K key and get my live paint. The other thing that you can do if you don't remember the K key is you can come over here and find your live paint over in the sidebar and make your change that way. Okay, so the only problem is that without the strokes, it's hard for you to see your pattern. So that might be a reason that you don't want to eliminate the stroke until you're ready to. So I'm going to just hit Control Z or Command Z and get the stroke back. All right, so there's my stroke. And yeah, now we can just keep on going. The other thing I was going to show you too, while we're talking about isolation mode and groups and so on, and actually I don't think I like the center being like that dark color. I think I would want it to be this color. You can also, by the way, come over here and like just select a color. I don't know if this, yeah, that's the right color. But you can select the color that you want to attach to that, and you could have it do something like that. And then later when we get rid of the stroke, that'll be gone. But what I will say is that let's go back to my selection tool here. And if I go in and I just jump in, I'm just double clicking until I get to my live paint group. Right now, if I wanted to take any pieces of these, let's say that I want to move the circle, for instance, you see what happens is that it starts to pull this away. Now, as long as these things are still overlapping, I can still use the live paint, but once I completely remove it, it's going to lose all that live paint information. So I do want to show you though that is something that you can do. You can still move stuff around while you're in live paint, but at some point you're going to lose the information if you completely pull it all the way out. And so you might want to experiment with that, maybe in a low stakes way on something that's not important. You can maybe make some overlapping, like a Venn diagram kind of thing, and make some overlaps that you experiment with and see how that works. All right, so let me just jump back in here. Okay. All right, so now we've got this pattern. We could still keep going. I'm not going to make you watch me do it. I'll just go fill this in and come back. Okay, I'm back, and this is where I ended up landing with my design. So you'll see that one of the things that I chose to do is I left some of these open spaces. These were not technically outlines. They were the spaces in between the two circles, right? And I did have strokes on each of the circles, and I removed those because I thought it was too busy. But some of these white gaps I left, and others I filled. So this was the approach that I took. You can see this is a guideline right here, but one of the things that you will notice is that when these things all converged, let me go hit the K key, you'll see is that I got these little sharp points here, and so I went in and I filled them. There is an option whenever you go into Live Paint, you can change the setting to adjust gaps so that it will deal with those gaps appropriately, but sometimes it doesn't deal with them the way that I would like. So I decided to go ahead and just do all of these individually, and it's up to you if you're following along exactly in the tutorial whether or not you would want to go and fill those or just leave them white. And that would be the alternative. Here's an example of where I missed it. And so, yeah, you might like the way it looks where it just stays white, and that's totally fine if you want to leave it that way. This is one that I missed, so you'll see that I can go in, oops, that's the wrong blue. There we go, and there we go, and another blue, and another blue. Anyway, so that's how I handled those. And I just chose to deal with them that way. Okay, and it looks like I missed this one. Yeah, the ones that are along the edges, I did do them, and I missed a couple, it looks like. So, and I'll show you in just a second what I'm thinking about in terms of building the swatch. And I should go ahead and fill these two ones at the very ends, just in case I end up using that. As if these end up in part of the final swatch crop, I think it's important to include them. And yeah, it looks like well, let's go ahead and figure out whether or not I need all of those. I think maybe I don't, because I didn't use any of them. So the goal is for me to create something that's going to be an even, if I make a swatch, it's going to repeat seamlessly. And one of the things that I had to sort of be mindful of is if, like where I was going to draw the line. So one of the things that I can go ahead and show you is I'm going to go into my guides. Here, I'm going to lock everything else so I don't adjust anything by accident. I'm going to go into my guides layer, and I'm going to draw some guides out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the center here, and I'm going to count outwards. So I think I want a total of 4 circles. So if I go 1, 2 on this side and let that snap, and then I can draw another one out and then go 1, 2 and let that snap right there. And then similarly, I'm going to do this same thing here, 1, 2. I will let that snap. And it looks like I probably do need to handle those. And yeah, I should go ahead and handle those. I'm going to undo that. I want to make sure that these are all filled properly. Yeah, because otherwise it won't be consistent with the way that I've handled everything else. It looks like I missed a whole bunch of these actually. So hold on just a second. And one of the things that's useful about you seeing me make that mistake is that you realize that I make that mistake too. Everybody does. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill in the ones that I missed so that you don't have to watch me do it. All right, now I think I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock my guides. I locked my live paint, and I'm going to go and I'm going to create some new guides. I already created the ones on the sides, so I'm going to go back and add the ones down below. So I'll count 1, 2 and let that snap. And then from the center, 1, 2 and let that snap. And that gives me a way to go check. And what I can do to just double check is that I can look on these edges and I can say, okay, I've got orange. It's going to get cut off when I crop it, and it's going to be with orange. And in fact, before I do all of that, what I can also do is go ahead and I'll draw a box out. I'm going to make a new layer right above the live paint. And I'll just call this, I'll call it swatch box or something like that. And I'll lock my guides so that it doesn't get messed up. And for swatch box, I'm going to take my marquee tool or my rectangle. I'm going to make sure that the fill is turned off, and I can give it a darker color just so I can see it. And I want to make sure that the properties, I'm going to go to the properties tab, and I'll turn the size down so that it's a lot smaller. And with snap turned on, it should just snap right up here in the corner. And it did. So I'm going to draw this out. I'm just sort of dragging it until it pops in, snaps. There we go. And now I've got my thing drawn. So if I go to my layers here, I can turn off my guides. Oops, turn off the visibility of the guides. And you'll see that now I can look at this and kind of ascertain the visual information a little bit better before I go and crop it. so that it repeats properly. So I can see that I've got orange. This is going to get cut, but it'll repeat over here with orange. This blue will repeat with that blue, and so on and so on. This light orange will be with that light orange. This sort of peach color will be with that peach color, or coral, whatever you want to call it, and so on. And so I just made sure that the repeating pattern is going to look right. Okay. Okay. Now to create the swatch, what we need to do is we need to put a clipping mask on this and crop it. Now, if you want to be able to edit this again, the thing is, once you crop something, it literally will remove the material. So we might want to make a copy of this, right? So what I'm going to recommend that you do over here where it says Live Paint, we're just going to, let's just close some of the swatch stuff around here and just get rid of it for a minute. I'll open it back up in a moment. What you can do is make a duplication of this Live Paint. And if I drag Live Paint down to my new layer panel where it says Live Paint Copy, I'll just drag that to the bottom and we'll call that, we'll call it editable. Okay. All right. And we will turn the visibility of that off. And we can even say original. I usually just say orig. Okay, original editable. And now we'll just make sure that we've got this other Live Paint selected, the one that is active and current. And the thing is that you might think, well, let's just make a clipping mask. Well, the problem with that is that when you have complex groups, you can't crop it. And the thing is that even if I were to clip this in a clipping mask doesn't literally crop something. What it does is it just hides anything that's sticking out from beyond the clip mask, right? And so if we were to use this square, this swatch box square right here, if we were to use that as our clipping mask, then all it would do is hide the stuff that's sticking out, and then it wouldn't make a proper swatch. So what we need to do is we actually need to crop this stuff. Now, we can't just select these two and crop them because it doesn't want to crop something that is in a Live Paint group. I will show you what I'm talking about. So if I were to go select all of these, so we can select Swatchbox and Live Paint. And by the way, it's okay that Swatchbox is on a separate layer. In fact, just as a reminder, what's going to happen, you saw this happen earlier with the guides thing. I wasn't paying attention, but anytime you've got things on different layers and you try to put something, basically combine things together when they're across different layers, it will combine them into one layer. So don't be shocked if that happens. But anyway, I want to show you something that's not going to work, but you might think, oh, well, I'll just go do this. If I select the swatch box and the Live Paint, in theory, when I go over here to properties and I come over here to my Pathfinder, this is the crop option. And if you have something on top of other things, what will happen is that if you use this Pathfinder option, it will crop. It's sort of like a clipping mask, but it literally cuts the objects. It will crop anything that's sticking out of that. You would think that this would work. So if I click on this, though, it doesn't really work. You can see that it's not behaving properly. So yeah, we're going to undo the crop, okay, because it didn't work. And so what you need to do, and this is one of the reasons why we needed to make a duplicate of this Live Paint original editable in case we need to go back to edit something. What I want to do is I want to select inside of Live Paint. I want to go down here and I want to, actually I can just select this entire group right here, all the different groups that are grouped. I should be able to select that. And then we're going to come up to Object and we're going to say Expand. And what Expand does, and I do want to expand the object fill and stroke for this particular thing. What Expand does is you'll see that it took it out of Live Paint and it essentially just created separate objects out of all of these things, right? So if I were to select just that one object, you'll see that that is now its own separate object. I could move it around as I wish, right? And so there are a lot of things about that are pretty cool. Like later, if you wanted to start picking and choosing and removing some of these things, you could. But the point of what we're doing is that now I can actually use these things in combination to crop. So I can select my live paint layer, and that will entail everything that's in it. And I'll also select over here the swatch box. So now I've got my swatch box, which is going to be like the kind of the crop bounding box, and everything that's underneath it will get cropped. So if I go over here, while those things are selected, I'll go to properties, and then I will open up my Pathfinder right here, and I'm going to find crop, and I'll clip that. And then now you see that I actually have this thing cropped. And this is its own. Let me jump back over here to layer. And you see, as I said before, when I did that crop, it took everything out of live paint and essentially it just stuck it up here in Swatchbox, which is fine. So I can do a little test actually. So what I want to do is I want to select everything in the Swatchbox layer. I'm going to go over to Window and I'm going to find Swatches, which is right there. And now what I can do is I'll drag this whole thing right here into the swatch panel. And you see it created a little icon with a, swatch. So to test this, all right, this is the moment of truth, right? To test this, I'm gonna lock this swatch box layer and I'm gonna hide it just so you don't see that. And then I'm gonna select this old live paint layer and I'm gonna rename it and I'm just gonna call it test pattern. Okay. All right. And let's just stick that up here on top, and because we can get rid of this later if we want. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, we don't even have to make it be a rectangle. We could do some other shape if we wanted, but just for the sake of it, let's just go ahead and make a rectangle. And let's make the rectangle like that. And instead of having a blue fill, let's just use our swatch. And you see that it will repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat because now it is a swatch. And because we made it perfect so that it is a repeating pattern, you can see that it will go on and on and on, and it repeats perfectly. Now, it's a little weird and spotty because I chose to make it not, absolutely like a perfect, every other color was the same fill. I did something that was a little bit more whimsical, I guess. And so, you can do this however you want. You can make something that's totally scattered. But the point is that now that is a repeating pattern swatch and it works just fine. And yeah, and I could fill any shape with that. In fact, if I wanted to just draw a star, for instance. Now make a big star, and you can see that it fills the entire star with that pattern, which is great. Okay, let's just undo that. And that's how you would make a repeating pattern, and that's how you can manage to use live paint and then also use it, expand it and crop it so that you can create swatches with it. All right, in the next tutorial, I'm going to go backwards and we are going to take our original pattern and I'll show you how to do some stuff with blends.